Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Maui, Hawaii, United States of America, August 18th, 2021. Today's talk, Artful Communication and the Intimacy of Us. A personal opinion, a personal sharing, to state the obvious. I so subscribe to the energy, the Dhamma fragrance, if you will, of uniqueness. And so therefore, artfulness is so utterly unique to the soul heart print of you and to me. And in that infinite interaction of shared artfulness, flowering, sacred, conscious, evolutional joint asanas of the heart, if you will. That playful, spiritual, poetic of us, infinite variations on the theme of infinity. I think when one enters that infinite possibility of cognitive perception, state of mind, applied mosaics in the shared collage of heart to heart, life to life, with all of its complexity. Wow, the palette of infinity in every given moment, textured by conditioning and memory and patterns and familiarity and textures of fear and apprehension, all the things that make life this artful, playful, surreal at times, dystopian landscape of topographic heart and consciousness. What will we do? And therein lies the wisdom, if you will, the beauty of the first element of art for me is conscious choice. I ask myself, both en route, entering the space, the conversation itself, is this an appropriate, skillful place to be? And I think there is something to be said for navigating our lives, again, to state the most obvious, as consciously and as intelligently and as mindfully as humanly possible, so that we're making wise choices on behalf of our heart's instinct, our love of quality. Life is just a succession of active imprints meeting virginal evolution. And it's a memorabilia, a photographic, cinematic, existential memoir of living experience. And it's our choice. How well will we live the event called your life, my life? And I don't know anything more important than to distinguish between, no offense to those who accumulate, but the event of passionate, purposeful, creative engagement with the intimacy of us, that domain, that cognitive landscape. How well do we play there? Isn't that what love is about? Isn't that what we're looking for in life? Isn't that what we're hoping to meet with regard to our significant other, even people that we know in our lives, our friends, mothers and fathers, friends, the memories of friends and lovers and mothers and fathers and gods and worshipers, whatever we have in terms of the pantheon of our intimacies. How well do we engage those intimacies? Now, we can meditate and we can do yoga until the moon comes up over the sun again, yet again and again, but really the context, that's where we live our lives, is in context, interiority with interiority, interiority with confluence of the senses, interiority with exteriority at the confluence of the senses of you and me. What will we do? Marriages are made at context level of human to human. And how well do we play there? How well do we inquire there? How well do we love there? And so really this inquiry into the artfulness of the intimacy of us, play with me there. Go into the world of your heart on the palette of your preferences and anoint your day with choice-making attributes. What will you deliberately create today? I refuse to participate in the compromise of my marriage ever again. Wow. Doesn't mean you separate or divorce. It just means that you heighten, right, the quality of the heart. And I'm so detailed with, now that there's computer art and digital art and the Photoshop of consciousness and all kinds of ways to improve and to enhance and to create textures of shared space. The inspiration to be artful, it's just downright lazy to play in the slop of predictability. Don't lay out on me your rage, your judgment, your blame, your anger. Go to the washroom, cleanse yourself, anoint the shared space with the poetic of a perfume that's never been smelled before, originality. So we have choice, and boredom often sets in with the inability to pixelate listening in a way that's virginal and tender. And so we have this habit calcification that covers over our receptors, and all of a sudden we interpret something as predictable and therefore boring or worrisome. But do we initiate within our own heart, soul, heart template this quality of heightened importance? There's something about the word reverential. There's something about the word sacred. There's something about the word unique. There's something about the word a heightened reverence for improvisational Dhamma jazz that by function of its spiritual content heals the divide between you and me, and we make good on the promise of the intimacy of us, because we're playing music together, we're dancing together, we're making love together, we're improvising this moment of God meeting God, goddess and God, God and goddess, whatever the references that we do and play with. We're playing in the poetic of the psychedelic, the psilocybin released from our souls, and all of a sudden we're in that heightened sense of MDMA, enriched intimacy. Just got to go right down deep where that rock and roll abides in our heart, and let the voice of that sound, that musicality, be the enrichment of that shared space. So how well can you make choices? How well can you be unique? How well can you embody the artfulness of your choice of creativity? 3 attributes. We've heard a lot about embodied, mindful presence. We've heard a lot about showing up. We've heard a lot about empowering the event right in front of you as the most epic, reverential moment of existence, those levels of heightened regard. But now that I'm there, canvas on canvas, naked, enriched with heart, soul, the history of your entirety, the history of my entirety, what will we do there? Now, I don't want to just play in the realm of spontaneous poetry and trans-spiritualized riffs. The pragmatism, living as a monk for a short period of time, the monastic form, the monastery, the walls of the Dharma contain within it men and women, animals, plants, trees. It's a garden of consciousness in form. And we're encouraged in those moments together when we're not meditating, so to speak, watching mind and body in various postures throughout the day, generally speaking with eyes downcast, keeping a very mindful presence within our body, in our movements, in our reaching and looking and bathing and washing and eating, all the events of a day, changing postures mindfully. We have the second form of meditation known as the contextual interactive Dharma event. And I remember so many times in the monastery, the teachers, I called them Kalyanamitas, people who empower truth over collusion, freedom over conformity. How well do you keep alive wisdom frequencies in the dynamic of communication? Use your mind and your speech skillfully to evolve the most prominent qualities of consciousness. I think artists are talented based upon their ability, on the one hand, to know the colors on the palette, how to mix them, and then to originally create forms on canvases or whatever it is that you like to paint your mind and your heart. The same thing with the artistry of the yogi is that they meditate, but they also live embodied in context, to state the obvious, with others. So the intimacy of us becomes a sacred Dharma, artful practice of transformational wisdom. That's the key here. How do we empower wisdom in our mind and body? And how well do we create formations of wisdom that shares the space in a way that releases each other from fear, greed, blame, self-treachery, worry, doubt, sloth, torpor, insignificance, postponement, anger, hostility, greed, self-abuse, delusion, projection, hallucinations. So the study of intimacy meditatively from the mind of the yogi, as I understand it, is how well does she or he understand the chaitasikas of consciousness. Chaitasikas are the mind qualities that are discernible by characteristic, by proximate cause, by manifestation, by near enemy, by function. And how well does she understand the chaitasika of red? How well does he understand the chaitasika of dignity? How well does she understand the chaitasika of khanti or patience? How well does he understand the chaitasika of equanimity? And I would only encourage you to encourage me to encourage our friends. Let us become Dharma artists of intimate shared spaces where in fact we put under the lens of mindful knowledge, mindful reflection, these different chaitasikas, formations within consciousness. We become literate, artistically aware of these different energetic frequencies, and equally as we can use words and we can sing songs and lyrics, we can identify these invisible textures of consciousness known as chaitasikas, and we can deliberately, mindfully, playfully, more fluently, artfully create from these cognitive states of mind, these chaitasikas. So from a monastic point of view, a yogi's point of view, a meditator's point of view, again, a meditator isn't one who sits with their eyes closed. A meditator is an ability of consciousness, an individual's ability of consciousness to mindfully understand the contents of consciousness and how to creatively apply those contents in a way that liberate self and other as much as humanly possible from greed, anger, and delusion, and the nibbanification, the unconditional release into formations. So, you're playing in the world of relaxing, grasping, and attachments and fears. And I gather from my own words today that intimacy and the artfulness of communication is very much connected to how well do we understand states of mind. Okay. I remember often in the monastery as well, there would be teachers who were very skilled at understanding the physics of communication and the patterns of communication. And you could hear phrases quite often, language that does not lead to emancipation, language that is circular, language that is self-denigrating, language that leads to the edification of wisdom and release. And we were often encouraged to study the patterning of communication. And on the one hand, did it lead towards heightened Dharma luminosity, or did it diminish luminosity? And there are many things that by conditioning, to state the obvious, we delight sometimes in abusive language and in denigrating language, and how often I have heard over my lifetime and myself participating in speech that if the person that we were speaking about were listening, it would be difficult for her or for him to hear these words, and in fact they would be embarrassing to me and to the other people speaking about her or him in this way. But if that person were present with us in that conversation, how would they feel? Now, if we were to understand the Cetasika of empathy, we would understand and put ourselves in the mind and the body of the other, even though they not be present with us. A whole other heightened regard for caring for other. And so the study of these states of mind in terms of their patterns, for example, there's a very well-known Buddhist Pali word that I'm very fond of using, and it's very creative. You can hear it. It's called Sampapalapawasa. And its meaning, as I understand it, is almost, if not identical, to the sound of the word, Sampapalapawasa, circular. In other words, conversations that don't go anywhere except loop. Looping conversations. It may be looping within a minute, it may be looping within a week, it may be looping within a lifetime. And there are a lot of loops. People, if you notice, in patterns of communication will often do things, say things, behave in particular ways, respond in particular reactive patterns of Sampapalapawasa. And so their psychological patterning becomes very discernible to those who have the window radiant awareness, clear glass. They see through the pattern, they see the loop, and they tend to creatively relax those denigrating patterns that don't lead to edification of shared space. And teachers are very skilled at this in teaching individuals who often loop. And you see some very prominent yoga teachers and workshop leaders and meditation guides who are professional loopers, loopers who have commercialized their intimacy to the point where almost everything out of their mouth is seeking, directly or indirectly, clients, students. Whereas other people who live more liberated in their presence, there's an innovation, there's a type of jazz. I'm not a musician, but I'm a spoken word artist. But jazz, people who are proficient in jazz really incredibly talented musicians and singers who can improvise with that level of spontaneity and play music that entertains 5,000 or 5 million or the heavens. They have a foundation of training and practice and recall and improvisational memory that's so spontaneous that within the memorized Broadway jazz script, there's a script. But at the same time, there's virginal presence. There's intimacy. It's making the person right in front of you the most important event of your life. So you're not there to loop them into your client base. It's not a hustle. I'm down on hustle. But there's something about the commerciality of presence that's a bit annoying. And you can feel it. You can hear people who tell the similar or the same joke, the same riffing, the same story, the same patterning. And so the intimacy of us coming to the end of today, the quality of the conversation. We don't like to be judged. We don't like to judge, but we're constantly judging and we're constantly being judged, evaluated by qualities, knowingly and unknowingly. How interesting are you? How connected are you with your words, to your feelings, to the authenticity of your past? What is integrity? Words that align with constructs. You can trust that the words that I'm saying to you reflect the reality of my life, known and unknown to me. There's an alignment, integrity. There's something so beautiful about the simplicity of an individual who she and he is rooted in integrity. The communication, the play, the trust of integrity. They're not there to dazzle, so to speak, but you can feel their rootedness in non-harm. They're not afraid because they've got integrity, rooted in conscience and in dignity. Uncontrived naturalness. How well do you care for the space? There's something so beautiful to meet those boys and girls in life, even friends and family that you've known. And I've joked endlessly about how hard it was to be with my mother and father when they were alive for more than 3 days. It would often take 3 months to decathex from the intensity of me reverting to a teenager. Why? These words are easier to say than to manifest. I respect that. But putting intimately under the observational lens of your own psychological, existential, mindful heart, feel, take risks, eroticize the space. There's something so magnificent about making the event of you and me together in this moment now eventful, magnificent, profound. Say no more about being the first and last. Who knows, any given second. In breath, out breath is gone. Mid-sentence, 250,000 people today, if they were talking, will pass away. Some of them as young as a month, a year, 5, 10, 50, 100. All around the world, every country, every nationality, every conversation. God has a karmic sword that just severs the cognitive moment. Wherever we are, wherever we're standing, walking, talking, lying, sleeping, awake. Just like that. So when we talk about communication, we talk about the urgency of communication. We talk about the beauty of intimacy, the artfulness of intimacy. We talk about the poetic of this hyper-spiritualized event called you and me and the intimacy of us. The playfulness, the humor, the get down, roll up the sleeves, get naked into the shared space of like rock and roll. You know, I could go on, but I won't. Maybe I'll continue tomorrow. There's something so remarkable. I'll close with this. I'm so down with taking Dharma out of the retreat, taking meditation off the cushion, yoga way out of the studio and off the mat. We are who we are, where we are, embodied in the body that we have with the faculties of consciousness, with our senses. Our Dharma, our yoga is an all-time event in all places, all context, all times, all circumstances, all degrees of complexity, to state the obvious. Do we live and breathe the Dharma as the oxygen of everything that's beautiful? Are you that willing to embody a non-apartheid approach to intervene, to use the Thich Nhat Hanh phrase, to state the obvious? We are always in an intersubjective intimacy of I and other. Therein lies in-breath, Dharma, engagement, high quality. So the more that we play in the theater of our soul with artful production, become the actor, become the director, become the audience, become the lover, do everything to empower the virtue of your rock and roll. Today is the first day of my life, and I've got the blessing of nearly 70 plus years of existence plus eternity to draw upon. It's all in a state of evolution and birth and death, and the theatrical strings of trans puppetry. Relax your hold on conformity. Drop into the utter uniqueness of your yoga, your Dharma. Stop circuitries of circular conformity. Become naked. Own your shape. Whoever taught us to hate or judge the shape of our breasts? Whoever taught us to judge or blame or criticize or compare the shape of our teeth? You hear the word authenticity, and it's so challenging in a communication of artfulness with other, to authenticate and to re-authenticate and to rebirth and to birth again and to nibbanify and erotify, to ubuntify, to be in tender, vulnerable intimacy together, to be able and willing to just cry and anoint and play. Why are we so contrived in predictable patterns of what the Dharma and what freedom looks like? Drop the dogma containers. A rare moment on a palette of the moment to live and to breathe in the spontaneity of your heart. Life is only an event to the extent that we make it a special event, a Dharma event, an incredible event. Remove the self-judgment that I am contained or obstructed. Ain't no obstacle between me and me. I refuse to participate in obstacle. I dissolve you, obstacle. I see you, Mara. I see you, disease, aging, wrinkles, and death. I refuse to believe, participate in your hallucination of limitation. There is nothing in me that's confined by the cognitive dance of Mara, right? Declare your allegiance to liberty and then anoint the space with your artful, playful. We all want to be in love. It's an instinct. We all want to be in liberating radiance with a higher degree of freedom never known before. It's an instinct for freedom. Make love Be in a sexual expression, even if you're dying in your last gasping, COVID-driven breath. Be sexy, be erotic. Refuse to believe the charade of samsara's dance of Mara. No confinement, no limitation dynamics, no matter who you are, where you are. Live in the radiance. Your lungs breathe regardless. Our bodies make love should we wish to make love. Let's do things together that we've never done before so that we create an evolutional arc in this existence that reinvents and re-enchants the sacred. That's what we do together, the intimacy of us. Play, eroticize, and bring the Dharma in. Remove predictable patterns of speech and behavior. Same old story. Remove it. Reinvent the narrative. At times we must see the poetic of war and revolution. Today is that time. We know it's that time. To use our voice is to speak up, to shout out, to write your own rap, hip-hop song and dance it on the stage of eternity. We must use our voice creatively, consciously, to confront the propaganda of profit and conformity, the hustle, the capitalistic worker. Monastic conversations with my friends, nuns and sisters and brothers and teachers. I had some of the most delightful, infinitely miraculous conversations that were so intersubjectively, psychically awake, especially with Sayadaw U Pandita. He was an existential psychic savant who had a deep Stephen Hawking-like pragmatism to his artistry of mindful application, of mindfulness in an intensive retreat environment. He was astronautic in that level of vertical skill. And I'm only just a beginner. But I saw him in my own practice. I listened to him and watched him with thousands of yogis. And I had the gift of being in conversation with him almost up to the week in which he died. He called me in and a few friends, Derek Kay, Janine Davies. The three of us were there with Ma Vajrayani and U Kin Line. And we danced in the intersubjective, psychically intuitive awakening of a Dharma poetic that I'd never witnessed or felt or known in my life. You could feel eternity playing in the jazz of the spontaneity of that room. It's been documented, it's on film, it's on auto recording, it's in a book. Wisdom for the World. But it's not the sonic vibration and the frequency of that shared space. My way of saying, what constitutes a Dharma conversation? If you and I right now were Buddha-like, Buddha to be, we are Buddha. We are in the awakened paradigm of transformational presence. Imagine the dimension of creativity that's possible, illuminated by the psychedelic and the MDMA molecules, and the heightened degree of mindfulness, concentration, and effort. The 5 spiritual faculties are heightened. The 7 factors of enlightenment are becoming radiant. All of us embedded in the 4 noble truths, the experiential application of overcoming fear and the elevation of freedom. And here we sit in this MDMA-like, psilocybin, psychedelic, psychic, abhinyan, nubontified space together. Imagine what we could do there. I want to create in my own sacred garden coming up. That's my aspiration. I want to close there. I've got a film that I'm writing and creating called Raw War. a spiritual, poetic, surreal, dystopian meditation on planetary suffering and liberation. I want to go crazy and to create something that's mandatory that you do psychedelics at the door to watch this film, a spoken word mandala, my war with samsara, my encounter, my love and fear of Mara. I want to create a cinematic mandala. I'm in that process. Meanwhile, they're the events of life. And so I'm encouraging you to encourage me. If we meet in person, dance with me and I'll dance with you in an erotic display of innovative, poetic, spiritual Dharma jazz. Let's do something to rock out and create structures and formations of transformational wisdom that become suttas. My friend Tom and I, and my friend Bob and I, we had a lifelong practice together of doing MDMA together, way back in the day. They're both passed on. I have so many memories and recordings of those events, of us taking very pure quality MDMA, hanging out with our recorder, our notes, our music, our fruit, and our water, and anointing the day together in this intimacy of us, and explore the spontaneity of Dharma structures in shared space. Some of the most memorable moments of my life. I wish there were soirees in which boys and girls and men and women could just simply get together, the two of us, and do MDMA and record it into play. And it only lasts for an hour and a half. Very specific oriented molecules of transformational intimacy. Those levels of trans-therapeutic existential shared intimacy, memorable moments, and we can create them regardless of molecules. But we are molecular, we're photonic. We are in the shared dance. This craving I have is what I'm recognizing right now, this deep yearning of my soul of wanting to be met and to meet and to co-create in a new place together. It's creating a monastic and a trans-monastic environment where enlightenment is the priority between us, along with play and erotic touch and intimacy and tenderness and heart. I don't like driving in the car going from here to there unless it gets me somewhere. But truly, I like arriving and being in that sacred space. I don't get bored there, do you? That's why I was a monk and nun. I made love in ways with nuns in a monastery that we never spoke about sex. We never even alluded to it. We never even thought about physically touching, but the dynamic was so utterly erotic. Reinvent these words. Create formations of transformational space. Anyway, enough of me today. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being in my heart. You can see I get very excited about this conversation. And I hope it comes to be that we meet and play in that real-time dynamic of eroticized Ubuntu and artful communication and the intimacy of us. Keep it high in your heart that life is a series of events called you on you and you with other. And what will you do there with you with other? How well do you create formations of beauty and dharma, tenderness and honesty, really radical, pure, transparent, non-invasive honesty. Live so freely that we are an expression of such a truthfulness in dynamic, flawed action. Own, include, release. Own, include, release. Be evolving together in this shared infinity. From my heart to yours, hope to see you tomorrow, God willing. 9:30 a.m. here from Maui. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.